There are some stories that don't scare you right away. They don't reach for your throat, they don't announce themselves with violence. They sit beside you instead. Quiet. Patient. Waiting for you to notice that something feels slightly off. The story of Elisa Lam is one of those. At first, it sounds simple: a young woman goes missing, weeks later, she is found. A tragic ending, a closed case. But simplicity doesn't always feel simple. Because long before the facts were understood, the world fell in love with a version of this story that felt darker, deeper, more mysterious than the truth. A version where danger lurked just outside the frame. Where something unseen followed a girl down a hotel hallway. And once that idea took hold, it became very hard to let go. Elisa Lam was 21 years old. A student from Vancouver, Canada. She was soft-spoken, thoughtful, and observant in the way people are when they spend a lot of time listening to their own thoughts. She loved writing. Loved fashion. Loved wandering through bookstores and finding pieces of herself in other people's words. She kept a blog, not to perform, not to impress, but to understand. To leave markers behind for herself. On good days, she wrote with humor and curiosity. On harder days, she wrote with honesty that bordered on bravery. Elisa lived with bipolar disorder. She knew her mind could be beautiful and dangerous at the same time. She knew that balance wasn't something you found once, it was something you worked at, constantly. Medication. Sleep. Routine. Structure. These weren't restrictions to her. They were lifelines. In January of 2013, Elisa decided to travel alone down the west coast of the United States. To many people, it sounded bold. To her, it was carefully planned. A way to feel independent without losing control. She promised her parents she would call every day. And she did. Short calls. Ordinary updates. Reassurances disguised as conversation. Until one day, the phone didn't ring. On January 26, Elisa checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. By then, the building already carried a heavy reputation online, but reputations are often louder than reality. In truth, the Cecil was simply tired. A large building trying to hold too many lives at once. Guests came and went. Long-term residents stayed invisible. Rules existed, but enforcement depended on who was watching, and often, no one was. At first, Elisa stayed in a shared room. Other guests noticed she seemed distracted. A little scattered. She said things that didn't quite connect. She left notes behind. Nothing cruel. Nothing violent. Just disorganized. Hotel staff moved her to a private room. It was meant to help. No one realized that silence can sometimes be louder than noise. By the end of January, something inside Elisa was loosening. Not snapping. Not breaking. Just drifting. Medication routines disrupted. Sleep patterns shifting. Thoughts beginning to overlap in ways she had learned to fear. On January 31st, she went out into the city. She walked. She browsed. She visited a bookstore and bought gifts for her family, small, thoughtful things. Proof that she was thinking of home. Proof that she still felt connected. People who interacted with her that day remembered nothing strange. And that's where the suspense begins, not with chaos, but with calm. Because mental health crises don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they move quietly, politely, slipping between moments that look completely normal from the outside. That night, Elisa entered the elevator. The video is short. Silent. Ordinary in every technical sense. And yet, it feels wrong. She presses multiple buttons. She steps in and out. She leans forward into the hallway, then pulls back. Her hands move slowly, deliberately, like she's explaining something only she can see. For years, people believed this moment held a secret. That something was chasing her. Watching her. Waiting. But what the footage shows is not fear. It shows confusion. In manic states, thoughts don't line up neatly. They overlap. They loop. The body acts out fragments of decisions that never fully form. Elisa wasn't hiding. She wasn't running. She was trying over and over to correct a reality that no longer felt stable. The elevator didn't move because too many buttons had been pressed, including the door hold function. It wasn't malfunctioning. It was obeying instructions that didn't make sense anymore. But the footage was edited. Slowed. Cropped. The timestamps removed. And once context disappeared, imagination rushed in to replace it. After leaving the elevator, Elisa moved through the hotel and eventually reached the roof. Despite what many believed, the roof was not sealed away. Fire escapes existed. Alarmed doors were unreliable. Employees later admitted that rooftop access happened more often than it should have. Rules were written, but no one was watching. In a manic state, danger loses its meaning. Height doesn't feel real. Cold feels distant. The world narrows to sensation and impulse. On the roof were 4 large water tanks. Industrial. Silent. Unassuming. Elisa climbed the ladder, she opened the lid, and she got in. Not because she wanted to disappear, not because she wanted to die, but because her mind was searching for relief. The tank was tall but reachable. The lid heavy but not locked. There is no evidence anyone else was there. No injuries. No struggle. No fingerprints that didn't belong. Inside, reality would have shifted quickly. Cold water, metal walls, darkness, no ladder back out. Panic, brief and exhausting. And then fatigue. The kind of fatigue that quiets everything. Days passed. Then weeks. Guests complained about the water. It looked darker. Tasted strange. Pressure dropped. Not because something sinister was happening, but because plumbing systems respond to physics, not mystery. When a maintenance worker opened the tank, Elisa Lam was found. The world rushed in too late. Confusion followed. Poor communication. Contradictory statements. And an internet that turned uncertainty into spectacle. Theories grew louder than facts. Fear became more interesting than truth. But the investigation found no evidence of foul play. No second person, no hidden crime, no conspiracy. The coroner ruled her death an accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder as a contributing factor. And slowly, painfully, the mystery closed. Not with answers that shocked us, but with answers that asked us to be gentle. Because the most unsettling part of Elisa Lam's story is not that something evil happened. It's that something human did. A young woman needed help, a system failed to notice, and a moment of confusion became permanent. The elevator didn't trap her, the hotel didn't plan her death, no shadow followed her down the hall. The danger was invisible. And once we finally learned how to see it, the story stopped being a mystery. What remained was something quieter. Something sadder. Something real. In the end, Elisa Lam's story doesn't ask us to fear what hides in the dark, but to pay attention to what struggles quietly in the light. There was no monster waiting for her, no secret hand pushing from behind, only a fragile moment where confusion met isolation, and no one noticed in time. The elevator doors closed without revealing a villain, the hotel returned to silence, and the internet eventually moved on. But Elisa remains, not as a mystery to be solved, but as a reminder that some tragedies don't come from evil intentions, but from unseen battles, and the cost of not seeing them can be irreversible.